I still remember the day I turned 75 and realized something had to change. I'd been struggling with unpredictable energy levels and noticing that my usual comfort foods, especially those fluffy white bread slices, seemed to leave me feeling groggy. When a dear friend mentioned the potential benefits of whole grain bread for blood sugar balance, I was skeptical. After all, bread is bread, right? And at my age, how big a difference could a simple swap really make? Yet the more I learned, the more I realized that trading in my old standby for whole grain alternatives could be the key to steadier energy and better overall health. If you've ever wondered whether a small nutritional tweak might offer big rewards, stick around. I want to share what I discovered on this journey and how it might help you too. One of the most pressing concerns many of us face as we move into our late 60s and beyond is keeping our blood sugar stable. We often hear cautionary tales of type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, and we know how quickly high blood sugar can sap our vitality. But we sometimes overlook the small, everyday dietary choices that either steer us toward better health or hold us back. In fact, bread is one of those deceptively simple foods that can have a surprisingly profound impact on how we feel. When our blood sugar spikes, it can make us tired, moody, and even more prone to inflammation. That's why finding ways to keep it steady is so essential, not just for preventing more serious conditions, but also for day-to-day quality of life. So why is this discussion important for you? Because whole grain bread, once thought to be a bland, health nut alternative, has come a long way. Many brands have found ways to keep it hearty and tasty while still delivering nutrients that help regulate our blood sugar. Moreover, improving how we manage our blood sugar isn't just about avoiding issues like diabetes. It's about enjoying sustained energy for hobbies, family gatherings, and all those little moments that make life meaningful. Feeling worn down and jittery from blood sugar dips can be discouraging, especially when we're keen to maintain our independence. This is why I want to show you exactly how making a simple change, like choosing whole grain bread, can boost not only your metabolic health, but also your sense of well-being. In just a moment, I'll walk you through 4 key ways that swapping to whole grain bread helped me, and others I know, stabilize blood sugar levels. We'll talk about taste, cost, nutritional impact, and even the belief that at a certain age, it's too late to see improvements. By the end of our time together, I promise you'll have a clearer picture of how small choices can lead to big transformations. You'll also gain practical tips that you can start applying today. No complicated meal plans or drastic overhauls required. I've dedicated many of my retirement years to learning about senior nutrition, speaking with dietitians, and chatting with folks who've tested these lifestyle tweaks themselves. I'm not a doctor, and this isn't medical advice, but I do bring the perspective of someone who's been there, tried it, and seen encouraging results. My goal is to empower you with the kind of knowledge that can help you make informed decisions that might ease some of the health worries that come with aging. Before we dive into these 4 highlights of whole grain bread for blood sugar, I'd love to know, have you ever noticed how certain foods affect your energy throughout the day? Think about that for a moment, and if you're comfortable sharing, feel free to jot down a quick note or discuss it with a friend. Sometimes paying attention to how our body responds is the first step in making meaningful changes. Now let's explore how a loaf of bread, or the right loaf of bread, can be a powerful ally in keeping our blood sugar on track. The first assumption many of us make is that whole grain bread must be dry, tasteless, or too dense to be enjoyable. Some of us grew up in an era where healthy bread meant thick slices that felt like cardboard. If you've believed this too, you're certainly not alone. Let me share the story of Ellen, a warm-hearted 72-year-old grandmother who'd spent decades baking her own white bread. Ellen was deeply skeptical about whole grains. She didn't want to give up the fluffy texture she loved. But when she started noticing that even small amounts of white bread made her feel sluggish and bloated, she decided to experiment with a store-bought whole wheat loaf. On her first day, Ellen toasted 2 slices for breakfast and topped them with a little peanut butter. She admitted the texture felt different, heartier, with a slight chewiness. Yet something else happened. She didn't feel that mid-morning energy crash she had come to expect. Intrigued, she tried switching to whole grain bread at lunch too, replacing her usual white bread sandwich. By the end of the week, Ellen realized that not only was her energy more consistent, but she was also feeling fuller for longer periods. She missed fewer of her afternoon walks because she no longer felt that overwhelming urge to nap. What's happening here? Whole grain bread typically retains all parts of the grain, the bran, germ, and endosperm, which means you get more fiber and nutrients than you would from white bread. Fiber plays a crucial role in slowing down the absorption of glucose, sugar, into your bloodstream, giving your body more time to handle it. This can help reduce those notorious blood sugar spikes that leave you feeling wiped out. It's not just about better numbers on a blood test. The emotional benefit is feeling more in control of your day, less weighed down, less moody, and more equipped to stay active. If you're new to whole grain bread, here's a practical way to start. Buy a single loaf of a brand labeled 100% whole grain or 100% whole wheat, and choose one that advertises at least 3 grams of dietary fiber per slice. Try toasting it for added crispness, which can enhance the flavor and texture. Pair it with a protein source like an egg, low-sodium turkey slice, or natural peanut butter to further stabilize your blood sugar. And remember, every brand tastes a bit different, so don't be afraid to experiment. If you really dislike one kind, try another. You might find yourself pleasantly surprised by the variety of options out there now. The payoff can be significant. A smoother, more sustained energy flow that supports everything from a morning walk to a game of cards with friends. It's not that whole grain bread is a magic cure-all, but it's a small, manageable change that many seniors find helps them feel better. Once you discover a brand you like, it becomes second nature to reach for it. And when you notice that subtle difference in how you feel throughout the day, the initial reluctance you may have had about taste often melts away. Another common misconception is that if you're already watching your overall sugar intake, maybe avoiding sweets, desserts, and sugary drinks, then bread choices don't matter much. But here's where it can get a bit tricky. Not all carbohydrates are created equal, and not all carbs break down the same way in our bodies. Consider the story of Javier, a 74-year-old retiree who prided himself on skipping dessert and avoiding candy. He didn't realize that consistently eating white bread could still lead to blood sugar fluctuations. When his daughter pointed out that his midday sandwich might be contributing to his low energy, he was baffled. After all, it was just a sandwich. Following his daughter's suggestion, Javier started reading labels. He learned that white bread can contain hidden sugars and lacks the fiber that helps slow digestion. He switched to a high-fiber, whole-grain brand instead. Within a few weeks, he noticed that he felt more energized during his volunteer shifts at the local community center. Instead of experiencing a lull after lunch, he found himself feeling stable and alert. That was a big win for Javier's daily sense of accomplishment. He used to feel guilty about nodding off in the mid-afternoon, and now he had more stamina to keep going. The real beauty here is not that Javier performed an extreme diet overhaul. He simply became mindful of the type of bread he was eating. By prioritizing whole grains, he effectively reduced hidden sugars and upped his fiber intake. This points to a vital piece of advice. Don't underestimate how everyday staples, like bread, can influence your blood sugar. When you swap to a product that's higher in fiber, you're giving your body a more gradual source of fuel. That means fewer highs and lows and a more consistent level of energy and focus. If you're thinking about cost or convenience, don't worry. Many grocery stores now have store-brand whole grain loaves that are competitively priced. Some even freeze well, which helps reduce waste if you're living alone and can't go through a loaf quickly. One tip is to look for sales or consider splitting a loaf with a neighbor. Also, watch out for marketing terms like wheat bread that don't necessarily mean 100% whole grain. Checking the ingredients list for whole grain or whole wheat as the first item is a great way to be sure you're getting the real deal. As you explore new breads, keep an eye on your body's signals. You might feel unexpectedly perkier after lunch or find it easier to resist that mid-afternoon sweet craving. Think about your own habits. Do you often have a slice of bread with eggs or butter in the morning? Or do you rely on toast with your soup at dinner? Any of these touch points is an opportunity to see how your body responds. If you're up for it, I'd love to hear whether you've tried switching breads in the past and what changes, if any, you noticed. Sometimes just being curious about our food choices can usher in positive shifts. We've covered a lot so far, and I'm curious if you've started thinking about any personal bread-related habits you might want to tweak. If so, take a moment to note them down or mentally tag them. This isn't about giving up your favorite foods entirely. It's about making small, strategic swaps that can pay off in more stable energy and improve blood sugar control. A third common assumption people make is that switching to whole grain bread won't really move the needle on more serious concerns like prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. It's just bread, they say. How much difference can it make? Let me introduce you to Doris, an active 78-year-old who always loved her morning toast. When Doris was diagnosed with prediabetes, her doctor advised her to watch her carbohydrate intake. But that advice felt so vague that Doris wasn't sure where to start. She tried cutting back on sugary snacks, but she overlooked her daily bread habit. After attending a nutrition workshop at her local community center, Doris learned that simple swaps, particularly replacing refined carbohydrates with whole grains, could help her body regulate blood sugar more efficiently. Intrigued, she decided to focus specifically on bread, given how often she ate it. Doris chose a high-fiber whole grain loaf, started reading labels more closely, and made it a point to pair her toast with either eggs or a slice of cheese. Over the following months, Doris noticed her fasting blood sugar readings inching closer to healthy levels. She also felt more balanced throughout the day, rarely experiencing the jittery lows that used to send her rummaging for snacks. The science behind this is straightforward. Whole grains contain more vitamins, minerals, and, most importantly, fiber than refined grains. Fiber doesn't just promote digestive health, it also slows the absorption of sugar into the bloodstream. By avoiding the rapid spikes and subsequent crashes, you give your body a fighting chance to maintain steadier glucose levels. This can be particularly crucial for those who are in the early stages of blood sugar issues. While it's not a standalone treatment, it can be a meaningful part of a broader strategy that includes regular movement, portion control, and stress management. You might be thinking, so do I have to swear off white bread forever? Of course not. There may be special occasions or family gatherings where you indulge in a bread basket or a special loaf of sourdough. The point is to make whole grains your go-to choice most of the time, so your body benefits regularly from that steady source of energy. If you're on medication for diabetes, it's always a good idea to consult with your doctor or pharmacist if you plan to make significant changes in your diet. Sometimes better blood sugar control means you may need adjustments to your medication, so keeping your healthcare providers in the loop is wise. Another practical tip: consider pairing your whole grain bread with foods rich in healthy fats, like avocado or a drizzle of olive oil, and proteins, like chicken, turkey, or beans. This combination extends the digestive process, giving you even more stable energy. The emotional payoff is feeling confident that you're proactively managing your health. Instead of worrying about sugar crashes, you can focus on the things you really want to do, whether it's traveling, spending time with grandchildren, or pursuing hobbies like painting or gardening. We've come a long way in understanding how everyday choices add up to significant health shifts. If you find yourself questioning whether one slice of bread could really matter, remember Doris's story. Small, consistent changes can be surprisingly powerful. I'd love to know if you can relate to this. Have you ever noticed how certain carbs leave you feeling wildly different than others? Sometimes just paying attention to these nuances gives you more insight into what your body needs. By now, you might have another question in mind. Am I too old for any of this to make a real difference? That's the fourth misconception. This idea that once we hit 75 or 80, our habits are so ingrained that change isn't worth the trouble. Let me assure you that it is. Harold is a wonderful example. He's 80 years old and had been eating white bread his entire life. After he developed mild neuropathy, his doctor suggested paying closer attention to his diet as part of a broader effort to stabilize blood sugar. Harold shrugged it off initially, believing dietary changes were more for younger people. Still, he promised to try a few adjustments, including a switch to whole grain bread at breakfast and lunch. The first couple of weeks were admittedly an adjustment. Harold missed the softness of his usual white bread. But as time passed, he noticed a subtle but steady improvement in his energy and mood. His afternoon exhaustion lifted, allowing him to go for short walks in the neighborhood he used to love exploring. After a few months, he reported feeling more grounded, less irritable, and more in control of his health. While the neuropathy didn't vanish overnight, these dietary changes supported his overall treatment plan and gave him a sense of empowerment he hadn't felt in years. Why does this matter for someone Harold's age, or for anyone who thinks they're past the point of reaping benefits? Because our bodies continue to respond to nutritional quality, no matter how old we are. Sure, the process of stabilizing blood sugar might take longer or require more tweaks if you have certain medical conditions, but improvements are still possible. And with improved blood sugar often comes better sleep, clearer thinking, and more stamina for everyday activities. Feeling stronger and more alert can open doors to social activities and fun hobbies you might otherwise skip because of fatigue or discomfort. If you're ready to give it a try, start small. Maybe replace just one slice of white bread a day with a slice of 100% whole grain bread. Or aim for a new breakfast routine twice a week rather than jumping in full force. The point is to give yourself and your taste buds time to adapt. Keep track of how you feel, not only physically but emotionally. Do you notice less midday fatigue, fewer cravings, a brighter mood? These positive indicators can motivate you to stick with the new habit. And if you hit a snag, maybe you don't like the first brand you try or you feel no difference initially, don't be discouraged. Change, especially at this stage in life, can take persistence, but it often pays off in ways you never anticipated. These 4 insights, overcoming the assumption that whole grain bread is tasteless, recognizing that even bread carbs matter, seeing the potential impact on conditions like prediabetes, and realizing you're never too old to benefit, have shaped my own journey. And they're part of the reason why I continue to pick up whole grain loaves from the grocery store, even though it was an adjustment at first. If there's one major takeaway, it's that small, consistent choices truly do add up over time, and they can either work for us or against us. So let's piece it all together. First, you learn that whole grain bread can taste good and actually enhance your sense of fullness and energy. Next, we explored how even if you're avoiding obvious sugars, refined bread can still sabotage your blood sugar stability. We then dug into the power of a simple switch to manage prediabetes or diabetes more effectively. And finally, we tackled that nagging feeling many of us have that it's too late to start. Every one of these points we've discussed carries the potential to brighten your daily life by helping keep blood sugar more balanced. That balance translates into better energy, better moods, and often a sense of independence that matters deeply to those of us determined to live life on our terms. I won't pretend this is urgent in the sense of a ticking clock, but there's a gentle urgency in caring for ourselves today so we can enjoy tomorrow with less worry. Improving blood sugar management can help protect us from bigger issues down the road, such as cardiovascular troubles or complications from diabetes. It also supports the everyday goal of feeling energetic enough to tackle our daily tasks and indulge in the activities we love. Picture yourself waking up with fewer aches, heading out for a morning stroll without dragging your feet, or playing with grandchildren in the yard without needing a nap right afterward. These might seem like small pleasures, but they're the building blocks of a life well lived. If you're intrigued by this idea of swapping your bread, consider taking the first step as soon as possible. Maybe that means adding a loaf of 100% whole grain bread to your next grocery list. Or perhaps it involves talking to a friend about trying different brands together and comparing notes. If you feel confident in taking a bigger leap, plan a simple meal, like a tuna salad sandwich or avocado toast, using your new bread choice. And if you really want to dive deeper, track how you feel for the next few weeks. Notice changes in energy, mood, and even your willingness to stay active. I also encourage you to share what you learn. Tell your family or your friends who might be experiencing their own blood sugar ups and downs. Sometimes the biggest help we can give one another is sharing our stories and strategies. And if you're one of those action-oriented individuals, write down a mini goal right now, something tangible like buy a whole grain loaf this weekend, or try one new recipe with whole grain bread on Monday. Each step you take will reinforce the belief that, yes, you have the power to influence your health in meaningful ways. Above all, remember that no matter your age, your body is still capable of positive change. We might not control everything about aging, but we do have a say in how we nourish ourselves. In making that shift to whole grain bread, you're not merely tweaking your diet, you're sending yourself a message that you deserve to feel your best. And isn't that what living well at any age is truly about? As you consider these ideas, trust your instincts. Consult with your healthcare provider if you have questions or special conditions. Then take the next step that feels right for you. May your journey be filled with a renewed sense of energy and a comforting certainty that it's never too late to try something that just might change your life for the better. Thank you for letting me share this personal and practical perspective on embracing whole grain bread at 75. I hope it sparks some thoughts on how even small dietary shifts can profoundly affect our daily lives. If you're ready to get started, go for it. If you need a little more time to think, that's perfectly fine too. Either way, know that you have options and that every choice you make can bring you closer to the balanced, vibrant life you deserve.